Good morning, guys. Jim Squares here, bringing you some more money solutions. Money hack around legacy planning. So, how do you do this withdrawals in retirement, or how is this kind of looking to pan out, at least as of 2021? So, first, make sure you like and subscribe down below. Share with others so that they can get the most out of their money, and we can all get the most of it. So, legacy planning. So, here's where we're talking about, like taking withdrawals in retirement and funding accounts, and then figuring out which accounts that we have. So typically, if you think about retirement comes along, and Social Security, 67, 65, depending on the age, your age when you're born. I'll put a link in the show notes around where you go to get these Social Security, like what you can get or when you can collect on it. But you think of it, Social Security as your base, right? So that pretty much a lot of people have that. And then on top of that, some people have a pension, and then some people can buy an annuity. So these are the three, I'll say the three core basics. And so what you want to do is you want to try to have that funding your core basics, the things that you definitely need. If you're still paying a mortgage, hopefully you aren't when you're retired, but if you need to pay car insurance, if you property taxes, things like that, your core things you have to have, like the very basic, so medical care, things like that. So that's what you want those things to fund. Now on top of that, what you want to do is you want to put on top of it your traditional IRAs or 401ks. Now this is where you come into the required minimum distribution. So when you're 72 and a half, I think, or 72, is you have to have a certain amount. So they'll look at your whole balance, let's say you have $1 million, they'll say, oh, you have to take out this percentage based on your age. And then that'll go on top of those core legacy planning items. And what you want to do is you want to at least take the RMD. Now, here's where you come into flexibility, is if you have a required minimum distribution and Social Security, you put those together. Now here's where you could play with your taxes, where you could say, oh, hey, if I need more money because I have a huge medical expense, you could take it out of your HSA, which I mentioned in an old video, which I'll link to below. But the HSA, that will tell you, like you can use that because you'll actually want to use that first after the required minimum distributions because it's taxable to your children in the first year of death. So that's where it's really important, is you want to use that up once you start getting in retirement and make sure there's none of it left, because that'll get taxed to your kids right away. And then you go back to any traditional IRA that you might have, and then you have the Roth. So the Roth is your best tool. It's the most flexible tool. So if you have a year where you have low expenses or low income, and then you want to kind of bump up your taxable bracket, because you got to spread it out over your whole time frame. So if you're living to 100 or 115, whatever year you're planning, or if you tentatively think, I would look at your parents and maybe a couple of generations back at around their aunts and uncles and see like how they're all living to. If they're all living to 100, probably plan to 100. And maybe just add on a little more, because every year usually the age is going up. And you kind of know your health too. But then you could say, okay, if I have 20 years left, like what is my tax bracket going to be? And you take this year's tax bracket, you increase it by 3%. That's a general number I use for inflation. And you say, oh, okay, well, here's the amounts I need to stay under to be in this tax bracket. And then what you can do is you can plan on the converting. So this is what I'm going to plan on doing when we come to retirement, is I'm going to convert traditional IRA money up to the tax bracket, and then I'm going to push as much as I can to the Roth. And if I need more money than that, then I'll take it out of the Roth. Because what's interesting is anything from your traditional IRA will be taxed, anything from your HSA will be taxed. HSA will be taxed a little worst because you get that all at once. You don't want to mess with that. You want to get that all done and out of the way before you pass. Then comes the traditional IRA, so that would be number 2 that you would want to start pillaging or to take money out of. And you could use that to fund things if you wanted to. If you want to get advanced, you could do life insurance or something like that. I don't know if I recommend that. I don't know enough about that. I don't know. I just don't feel like that's adding almost too much complexity into it. But you have, so first is the HSA, but then second is the traditional IRA, and then you have the Roth, where the Roth, they have to take it in 10 years, like they have to take it out. So if you have $1 million and spread over 10 years, well, that's $100,000 a year, and you're not getting taxed, which is tremendous for your heirs. But if you push it down to a child who's just a couple years outside of college and it's $100,000, it's all going to them. The college is going to go, hey, check out this kid. We got $100,000 every year. We're going to tax the heck out of them, and they get no scholarships. That's where you got to start thinking about your children and your grandchildren, depending on how far down you want to go. So I would recommend trying to think ahead 2 generations, because if your generation right below you is is set, then you could think out the generation ahead, and then you can give to that 2 generations past, because then you let your generation below you just focus on building their nest egg more, and then when they come around to having grandchildren and they're worried about like the future, they go 2 years past or 2 generations past. So if you're always like leapfrogging, like 5 years would be the ideal planning time frame. But this is a good, the leapfrogging thing is something that we should all be doing, because if I could fund my grandchildren's college, that would be ideal, because I'll have be making the most money. I'll have already settled for my retirement. I'll have already paid off all my college and home and everything, and then that will allow my children, so the ones in between, to focus on paying their house, their retirement, their cars. This would allow more long-term wealth to be grown in your family unit. So that is, I believe, the way to do it. And then you can also see the fruits of your labor, because if your kids below you aren't doing well, you might want to skip them anyway. So, because if they're not doing good, then why would you give them the money? Because they're just going to blow it, because they can't handle it so far. So that's my legacy planning approach. This is the theory that I have in my head. And if you want more details on it, be sure to throw out some comments if you want to know more details, or if you have questions or comments, definitely let me know. In the meantime, stay happy. We'll keep growing together. Share this with others, like and subscribe, and we'll be talking. Take care. Later.